Welcome to the Staffing Playbook podcast, your go-to resource for navigating the dynamic world of staffing and HR. I'm your host, Stephen Farrell. Join me each week as we dive deep into the strategies, insights, and stories that shape the staffing industry. From the latest trends to expert interviews and practical tips, we'll equip you with the right tools and knowledge to succeed in the staffing industry. Whether you're a seasoned professional or just starting out, the Staffing Playbook is here to help you play your best game. Let's get started.
10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Welcome, everybody, to the Staffing Playbook podcast. I'm your host, Stephen Farrell. We have an exciting episode for you today. We're going to be talking about scaling sales in the staffing industry. We're going to discuss strategies for growing your book of business in 2025. So if you're in the staffing industry, if you're in sales or client management or in technology, you want to tune in, share this with your peers. We are going to have a lot of fun, so buckle up. I am thrilled to welcome Dan Morey to the program. Welcome, Dan. How are you doing?
Oh, man, Stephen, great to be here. I am doing fantastic, man. I appreciate having me on.
Thank you. I want to give a brief introduction to those that don't know you, but I'm sure a lot of people do. So tell me if I slaughter this or get anything wrong. Feel free to correct me. But, you know, I've gotten to know Dan recently, been following his social, his posts. Really impressed. He's been on a lot of different podcasts. Dan he's the founder and president of Employment Solutions, which is interesting. I'm part of your Employment Solutions, so there might be a connection there, Dan.
Maybe.
He's also the chairman of NISA. Maybe. NISA, National Independent Staffing Association. Really a true trailblazer in our industry with over 20 years of experience in scaling businesses, building high performance teams, creating lasting client partnerships. He's got a annual staffing sales summit. We've got the second one coming up here in February, and a lot of great speakers. But Dan, did I miss anything? I'm sure I did.
No, man, you hit the highlights. So I'm grateful for it, but I'm more excited just to get into it, man. You've got some good topics today that I'm just champing at the bit to get at.
Yeah, looks like the Shark is tuning in. Welcome, Richard.
What's up, Shark?
Glad to have you. All right, so like you mentioned, let's just dive into. I want to start the conversation off with just the market landscape. 2024 has been a challenging year, followed by even more a challenging year in 2023. Most of the data points to the staffing industry being down 10% this year compared to last year, which again was a really tough year. And so as we look at the administration change, as we look at the staffing market today and where it's going in 2025, what do you think will be the most significant shifts in our industry next year? And how do sales teams prepare now to capitalize on these potential changes?
Yeah, I love that question, Stephen. And really, as I look out over 2025, I do see a silver lining. I do see some sunshine off in the distance. I do think it's going to take us 4 to 6 months to get there. It's going to be a little turbulent in the first half of the year, but I do believe that the economy and the market will settle onto a nice growth trend that we'll start to tangibly feel in the second half of the year. And really to point at your question about what should the staffing industry be prepared for and how should staffing sales teams prepare and change, I think there's two things that we need to be aware of. First and foremost, some of the the down cycle that we're in is not completely cyclical this time, meaning that there were some structural changes to the market that we need to pay attention to, right? So there's some things that are just not coming back to the way they used to be. And in my opinion, one of the main things that companies need to be thinking about is the buyers of staffing services are, over the last 2 years, they've actually experienced a bit of letdown. And we're in a bit of a trust recession with the buyers because agencies hadn't really been able to deliver on the promises of staffing. Attrition was up, turnover was really plagued the staffing industry, quality of hire metrics were down, so there's a lot of buyers that were like, oh, like we don't know if staffing agencies are the solution to it. So they started doing a lot of research on how do I solve this problem? Because it is a problem. This is not like the Great Recession when things tanked, so didn't job demand. The job demand is still there. We just created 250,000 new jobs just last month, right? So the demand is still there. The talent gap is still there. The clients need our services more than ever. They're just really reluctant. So they start doing this research on how do I find the right partner? So the main thing that I've seen that's shifted is what the client is buying. Okay. We'll say over the last 10 years, let's just simplify and say they were buying the person, right? They're like, hey, I'm going to work with this agency because they might have the person in their database and they might have the ability to go get this person to fill this role. Now, what buyers are looking for is they want to know they're partnering with a company that actually has the capacity to really manage talent acquisition. And I'm not saying they're willing to outsource all their talent acquisition. They're going to go full on RPO or anything like that. But they want to know that the staffing agency they're working with understands recruitment marketing and talent acquisition mapping and actually the process flow to actually consistently deliver talent that has a high quality placement metric. And they're really looking for a more sophisticated staffing partner. So that's the main thing that I've seen change. They're looking for different ways. They're looking for speed and convenience, which is something that, doing a very manual process hasn't always been able to deliver, but that's the Amazon effect. So they want someone that knows how to do talent act. They want speed. They want convenience. Price is now really a big value driver with the way that the economy's been fluctuating a little bit.
Yep.
So you have to be packaging that up. And then I don't want to get too far ahead into our sales and recruitment enablement, but salespeople are going to need to know what's changed within the agency for how we deliver our service and how do I package that unique value proposition up to sound different when I'm talking to the client to convince them that we are an expert, that we do have a better process for getting talent, and that is aligned with what they need from it to help meet their strategic initiatives. So that's one of the biggest changes that I'm seeing in the marketplace, and the companies that get that right, I think will be poised to ride that second half of the year wave into some serious momentum going into 26.
Dan, that was a lot. We got to.
Sorry, man. You came right out of the floodgates right there.
Okay. It looks like we're getting a little feedback. I'm not sure why, but there, it's corrected itself. But I couldn't agree with you more about what clients today are looking for now, especially in 2025. It's less transactional, less commoditized, and we are looking for a trusted partner in our employment strategy that has the expertise to support our employment strategy and our retention strategy, or even has a greater expertise than what they have to help navigate these very challenging times in employment overall. So I do want to hit on that a little bit, but also you mentioned price.
Yeah.
Certainly, I've experienced it here in Utah. It reminds me of the appliance industry, which I used to support years ago, where it's a race to the bottom on price, and so the margins are non-existent. And now every dealer has to deal, appliance dealer has to deal with zero to low margin. And I'm seeing that there's a lot of companies out there that are still treating agencies as a commodity, very transactional. And you've probably heard this before, but business won on price can be lost on price.
Yeah.
And they're just looking for the lowest cost to get what their needs. And there's no real partnership in their employment strategy. So I'm seeing a huge group of businesses that are treating the staffing industry as a commodity. But then I see, that silver lining that you talked about. There's other companies that do want that partner in their employment strategy, and they're willing to pay more in the margins to get that value because they see that value added. And that's, to your point, salespeople have got to learn what distinguishes themselves, from other agencies. Do they have the industry knowledge? Does the company or the operations team have that industry knowledge to bring value to their employment strategy? So when you look at staffing firms across America, Dan, you have a large majority are under 10 million, and then a small percentage that are that 100 million plus. And so, how does a small company compare to a large 100 million or greater company? How do they compete in that type of market and becoming that employment strategy?
So that's honestly, I love that question as well, Stephen. And with one of the structural changes that we're experiencing, that it's mainstream now, AI, automation, staffing is actually adopting these things at a much faster rate than they've ever adopted any technology solution in the past. And it's those tools and those implementations that actually will allow us to level the playing field. So if you are a smaller 10 million or under or 50 million or under agency, and you're like in that middle market and you want to compete with the large enterprise companies out there, again, to your point, Stephen, I think out of the 25,000 agencies in North America, there's like maybe 250 to 300 that have ever gone past the 100 million in revenue. So it's a very tiny fraction of a percentage. But if you want to compete with them, think about this. You have less layers of complexity. If they want to roll out a major technology change and they want to actually have automation and processes infiltrate every layer of the organization to be run efficiently and optimized, then it's going to be more complicated. If you're a smaller organization, you can act more nimbly. You can actually try things, see if they work really quick. And if they don't, you can pivot to the next thing a lot quicker than a large organization. So this is actually a really interesting time to be one of the smaller companies and be competing because you have the ability to run faster. Now, I get it. The bigger companies, they're going to have more sophistication, more experience, more money to be able to throw at these things. But if you actually just do it smart and you're wise about it, you can actually be nimble and meet your clients' needs just as good, if not better, in my opinion.
No, I couldn't agree with you more. With AI, these large language models, I mean, you can literally, for pennies on the dollar, create your own large language model to support your systems, to support your processes, and it's really streamlined everything. And now you're doing what a large enterprise has been doing at scale, with just a small team with one AI agent. So I'm looking at just when we look at prospecting and outreach for sales teams out there in 2025. You mentioned earlier about just the behaviors have evolved from our client base. They're looking for that trusted partner that can, really bring value to their employment strategy. And so when we look at just prospecting methods that are traditional in our industry, it's just like a cold call, a follow-up email, a drip campaign, an in-person visit, a thank you card. And as you're doing this, you find that there's not the same amount of business out there as there used to be a couple of years ago. And they're using 5 agencies with 20 associates on assignment between the 5 of them. And it's a lot of people are buying on price. What with your experience, the clients you've worked with, the top salespeople that you've been interacting with, are there new prospecting methods or outreach tactics that you see becoming essential for identifying and engaging with these high potential clients?
I do. And I want to hit on that, but I want to cover something you just mentioned about how when you're trying to compete with an organization that might be using 5 agencies to kind of cover 20 headcount at a location, you have to be thinking about what is a pain point that client might be experiencing. And most of them don't really like working with 5 agencies. They would love to work with just one if they felt like one could meet their needs, or 2. But sometimes it's hard to break in without having to compete on price and race to the bottom. So if you think strategically about how do I solve that problem, be thinking about how can you maybe wrangle those up or group those 5 together and represent those 5. And we're talking like a VMS model, right? Can you add some sort of MSP to your business offerings, and instead of going to that client and say, hey, let me be one of five or let me be number six, how about, hey, would you are you struggling with, visibility into your program, or do you actually lack, clarity or, consistent performance, or how do you like dealing with all these five, different invoices and time cards and points of contact? And most of the time they'd be like, oh, that's the trade-off. Like, we don't like any of that. And if we could get rid of that, we would. Then say, hey, let's talk about, maybe us being an MSP, we'll manage it. You'll still have access to those same partners and get those same talent, but we'll rank them. So if there is an underperformer in there, then we can actually replace them, right? Or give more business to the top performers and kind of make it easier for you. And with these tools, and you could partner with companies out there. I mean, Simple VMS is a good example of that. Like, it's kind of, we'll kind of cross sell with you. So I know that wasn't the ask, but like, that's a strategic approach of how do you actually deal with that sort of situation.
Before you continue, I also want to hit on that because it's important. VMS, I think, is a great solution for a lot of these challenges out there with multiple agencies. I also have found, sales reps we have short memory, and we have to take and same with our clients. We have to take our clients down memory lane. Like, before COVID, it was normal to have one agency supporting a large, volume account, maybe a second one as a backup just in case. But when we had this labor shortage during COVID, there wasn't a single agency that could handle all the business. And so these companies were forced to bring on multiple agencies. And so I like to teach my sales team to ask that question, like, take us back down memory lane of why you went from 1 to 3 to 5. What was going on? And typically it was during COVID. And it's like, okay, so, did that fix your problem? Yes, great. Are you having the same problem today? Well, no, you have 20 openings versus 200. So do you still see or foresee the need to have 5 agencies to support 20? And then all that paperwork and different invoices and communicating with 5 agencies, is that still ideal for you? Or do you see that changing for you in the future?
Great questions. Great question asked, because sometimes people just need to realize, they need to remember, oh yeah, like, why am I doing this? Sometimes people will continue to do something that's illogical and unreasonable because they're too busy to think about it. Yep. But if you get them to think about it, and be like, yeah, that actually doesn't make sense. I'm still facing these challenges. Like, I don't need 5 agencies to solve for 20 openings, and if you get them to admit that to themselves, now you're moving them in a direction where you've helped them realize something, and that's valuable. That creates this like expertise currency with them. So great questions that you can ask there. So prospecting outreach, you asked me, are
moving into the tactics, because, that's what we're here for. Yeah.
Yeah. So you mentioned, is there something that's changed? Yes, absolutely. We need to be doing things differently. You are right. The multi-touch campaign with the calls and the emails and the mailers, all of that stuff is still good. It's foundational, but nobody can deny that cold call percentage conversion rates have slowly continued to decline. Email, especially with the advent of, AI and automation, like, it's even getting worse. And then you get those people that have been doing like automated outreach on LinkedIn that's sort of like ruining it over there too. You still need the multi-touch, but I'll tell you, in my opinion, because what we're trying to do is we're trying to convince people that we're an expert, that we don't need to convince them that there's a need for our services. Like, there's massive pain, there's massive shortage of labor, right? So we need to convince them that we're the expert. And that's going to help us get more meetings. It's going to help us actually get more favor when we're in the meetings and have them actually give us tolerance with our questioning and things like that. So this is the number one tool that I think, not really tool, technique that I think salespeople need to be adding to their prospecting, and it's social selling. And I think this is a two-sided coin here. I think first part, you need to create authority, right? And I know a lot of salespeople are like, oh, I don't have time for this. I don't want to do this. This is uncomfortable. But you really need to get into that influencer marketing, content creation mindset, right? You need to get to the point where, like, holy cow, this person is everywhere, to where people start to think of staffing, they start to think of you, right? So it's doing, video podcasts or audio podcasts. It's doing a blog or a vlog. It's actually creating a lot of content out there. It's posting on LinkedIn or wherever your target audience is the most. It's creating a lot of content there if you're really adept or have marketing support and you can actually have a cross-platform, ability, go for it. But if not, pick one channel and dominate that channel, but create that sort of content so you start to get the credibility of being an influential expert or thought leader in your space, right? That is going to go so far in creating sort of the celebrity effect, right?
Yeah.
Like we've all seen it. If you grew up, I grew up in a small community, right? A small town. And there were like news anchors in the little small town, TV stations. But if you saw those people out there, they were like, oh, they're like local celebrities because they were like on TV all the time, and it created a celebrity effect. But in reality, like they're just regular people doing their job that they love to do, and they're not, so much more successful than anybody else, so to speak. But because they have this air of visibility in media, we give the celebrity effect, and you can do the same thing for you. So I highly encourage, that's the first side of it, is have a strong content game that positions you and your agency as the authority at solving the problem that you're best equipped to solve for your clients, right?
Yes.
And that's going to help you create awareness and drive some inbound, but then you also need outbound and social selling. And I will tell you one thing that, Stephen, you probably resonate with this as well. I get prospected all the time on LinkedIn. Like I probably could open up my LinkedIn right now and I would have, maybe 40 or 50 messages in my inbox, and probably 20 of them are someone trying to sell me something.
Crazy.
And it's like, and they're all doing the same thing. And it's all like, I hope this email finds you well. I'm like, okay, well, that was written on ChatGPT, right? And another one hit me the other day, and I could tell it was just an automated piece, and I wasn't actually the target market, but it was like I got swept up because I'm in the staffing and recruiting industry. But when I saw the messages, like had nothing to do with me and what I was going for, I was like, this was clearly automated, or even worse, I've had people call me the wrong name. It's like, hey, Joan, would you be interested in outsourced recruiting services? I'm like, oh God. So like you see a lot of that, but what you don't see that really, as of today, this probably is not going to age well, but as of today, can't easily be replicated is a AI or deepfake, is a video prospecting message, right?
Yeah.
Jump in your LinkedIn inbox. If you see someone that's out there, record a Loom or whatever your video, your short video recording tool of choice is, and just say, hey, you know what? I was on your career page, or I was looking at some of your listings on Indeed, or I saw your jobs listed on LinkedIn here, and point some stuff out and talk to them, be like, and just say, hey, could we help you fill some of these roles? That's memorable. Less than 1% of the people that prospect me use video. But 100% of the people that use video get my attention because it's different. It stands out. So that's a tool that's sort of blue ocean right now on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
Obviously, more people will eventually go there. And two, with things like Hey Gen and the advancements with AI, people will be able to create their own avatars, and you're going to get fake videos doing prospecting. But as of right now, it's a blue ocean. So if I'm going to say do one thing to improve your prospecting, focus on social selling. Build your brand identity to be an expert, and actually use some unique ways of outreach on LinkedIn, like using video and things like that. I think that will really set you apart.
So I want to hit on both of those for just a minute.
Yeah.
I'm going to start with the LinkedIn messages. Like you, I get countless messages every day. I've got, I don't know how many unread messages in my inbox. And I don't know if you do this. I think it's probably common, but just to clear out my outbox, I'll click into a few of them. So it shows read instead of unread, because I just hate the unread message.
Yeah.
And I briefly, like 3 seconds, look at the message, and immediately I go, I will never do business with this person, because that was just like, they took no care, no interest in me and what my needs are, not even trying to figure them out, not providing any value to me. And so it's like, you could be a fantastic, resource for me, but I'll never give you the opportunity, because that single cold outreach was just terrible, and I won't give you the time of day. And so the video message I've only received one of those this year, and I didn't do business with this person, but I reached back out to her and I said, that was great, like super unique, but what your services offer, I clicked on your website. It's just not for me, but thank you. That was really neat. And maybe next time, learn a little bit more about me, see if I'm actually a good fit before you send that out. But I started doing video message outreach, not through LinkedIn, but I record it with a whiteboard behind me. This is back in 2020, and I'd put the customer name on the whiteboard and be pointing to it in a thumbnail in an email. And I did all my research on the customer and did a very nice outreach. I noticed you have these job postings that are open. They've been open for a couple of months. have you found the people that you're looking for, or are you still looking for additional support in your staffing? If you are, let me know. You can click on the link below to schedule a visit. And it was highly successful. That campaign worked well.
Absolutely. And Stephen, actually, one thing you said in there is a great point that's worth highlighting. When someone prospects you and you can tell that like they're just going for sales as a numbers game and they treat you like a number and they're just playing the odds, right? You can sense that and you're like, I'm never going to do business with you because you don't value me as a prospect.
That's right.
So I think there's a direct correlation between the fact that we've ramped up our sales efforts to be sales as a numbers game, and we're also being commoditized because now our clients just treat us like a number. It's because we started it that way. And if you actually look at it, and this is what blows me away, I teach salespeople this all the time. Like if you get a good client, right? I'm not saying your best one, but if you get a good client, do you know what the lifetime value of a good client for margin is in this industry?
You need to know that.
You definitely need to know it, but it can be huge. It can be substantial. It's like, hey, a good client, if you have someone that has just 10 head count, right? Just 10 head count week in and week out, and they're just kind of steady Eddie client like that. And you're talking about industry average, maybe somewhere between $200 to $300 of margins generated by headcount a week. It's $2,000, $3,000. You're talking about 100 grand a year, 150 grand a year, right? Just in margin on that one good client. And that's not even your home run stuff, right? That's like, so if they're worth 100 to 150 grand a year in gross margin, like that's pretty valuable. And I always tell salespeople, like you've got to match that effort in your prospecting. So sometimes more is not better. And I'm not going to beat this one to death here, but if you took someone that typically sells your Hyundais and your Fords and your Toyotas, like in a commodity car, and you put them into a Ferrari dealership using the same techniques, they wouldn't sell very much.
No,
because someone that buys a Ferrari buys based on a specific value set. And if the value that you're selling doesn't align and the way that you're selling isn't differentiated to match your value, you're not going to make a lot of sales. And I think prospecting very generically, the way it has been done a lot in our industry, is causing that same thing. So I'm glad you actually called that out, because that's a thing that's not really talked about a lot.
Yeah, it's quality, not quantity. My sales team, we have a framework of here's what success typically looks like if you make X amount of calls, discovery meetings, proposals, etc. But we don't measure. We only measure that to see if it's working or not. But it's for my team, it's, did you have a quality conversation today? Did you talk to the right person? What did you learn? It wasn't about signing them today, but what did you learn about them? What did you learn about, the way you had the discovery meeting, the good and the bad, and how do we take that moving forward to our next prospect? I want one more just a quick minute on the last point for social selling, social presence, being that brand authority. Many people find that intimidating. They don't want to put themselves out there. They're scared that, a lot of sales reps don't even post on LinkedIn on a regular basis. And which I think, you just got to start somewhere, start with a daily post, start, sharing other people's posts. But I think there's that blue ocean you mentioned, because there's so many people that are hesitant of putting themselves out there, putting content, becoming authority. They don't know how, or they don't want to. I don't know if I can ever change that, but the ones that embrace that, they are going to set themselves apart as that authority in the space, in their market, like the local TV guy. And that's when you start having more leads that you turn down versus leads that are turning you down. And that's a fun place to be in. Yeah,
it basically allows you to get really selective and pick the best clients that you've got the best chance of serving well and succeeding with, and growing long term. And that's really how you want to grow.
Yeah. I want to move in for just a minute into just client relationship management, because, we've been talking about how, this industry has been very transactional. And I think this past year, and it started with COVID, we really kind of exposed the staffing industry as being transactional, and customers are no longer looking for that. They're looking for those consultative partners that provide value and strengthen those long-term, relationships. So how do you see sales teams moving into that true consultative approach?
So I'm actually going to hit some quick hit ones on this one, because this is direct and to the point. With client relationship management, if you want to grow and scale a relationship, it's all about keeping your promises, delivering on the promises that you set, and having that sense of accountability and accepting feedback to improve, right? So it really starts with when you set that client relationship up, define what it is that they expect you to do for them, right? And then be okay with measuring it and say, hey, what are the metrics that we really should be looking at to know what success looks like and what it doesn't look like? And then review it quarterly or biannually or annually at the very least. Have a review, sit down with them and say, hey, here's what we did. You asked us to fill this many positions. We were able to fill X percentage of those within X percentage of time. The turnover rate was here, and provide some insights along the way to show where you performed. Also, don't be afraid to be vulnerable and uncover opportunities for improvement yourself and say, hey, we noticed that, our turnover in Q3 was a little bit higher than we'd like to see, and it didn't really correct in Q4. So we think we've got to try some different things. Maybe it's an incentive, maybe it's a qualitative screening process, whatever it might be. It's okay to share that you identified areas of improvement, but hold yourself to that standard. And that's how you will start to become that key relied on partner with them, right? And that's step one. Like, just doing that part is so key. Step two, and this is the technique I absolutely love this, and this creates deeper strategic integration with you and your staffing agencies. See, man, I used to do this technique, and I'm a simple guy. You're a whiteboard guy. I'm a whiteboard guy. I would literally do this on just a simple 8.5 by 11 inch blank piece of paper. I would sit down with a customer in my yearly review, and I'd say, hey, as we're looking forward to next year, can we actually share some of the things that you're trying to do strategically, and I'll share some of the things that we're trying to do strategically, and see if there's some middle ground for us to collaborate on these areas. Ideally it's going to be in the realm of workforce management, but this exercise is called you, me, us. So I would literally just take a piece of paper and I would turn it on its side, and I would put 2 lines, dividing it into three sections. At the top of one, I'd put you. The top of the far right, I'd put me. And in the middle, I'd write us. I'd be like, okay, hey, tell me some of the things that are strategic initiatives for your company this year. Right. And they'd be like, oh, we want to improve our employee, morale or retention. Okay, that's great. What are some other things? We want to do safety. We want to actually do better training and development. And I'd steer them to make sure they're staying in the human capital piece. I'd be like, oh, that's great. But can I share some of the strategic initiatives we have? We're trying to roll out, a more comprehensive assessment testing program. We're trying to do, better performance management for our field employees. We're trying to actually roll out these safety programs or whatever we're trying to do. And then I would just connect the dots. And do you remember like when you were a kid in grade school and the workbooks would have like, hey, draw a line from the things that match? Like, we would just do that and be like, hey, let's look at this. You want to improve retention. We're trying to have, improve retention on temporary employees. Let's work together on that. And we would find 2 or 3 things that kind of match on each side and say, hey, how about we work together on these things and we combine resources and efforts and thought power. And if it helps you and it helps me, that's a win. That's a good partnership. And they'd be like, oh, that's great. And some of the biggest areas I had seen were, safety programs, training and development programs for employees would be great ways to stick together. And this sort of integration strategically grows the account, exposes you to more decision makers or buyers within an organization, but also makes the relationship sticky, based on value, which is, that's the I guess the coup d'etat right there that we're going for.
Dan, you just dropped a knowledge bomb. Operations teams, if you're tuning in, press rewind, go listen to that again. I am stealing that from you. I hope that's okay. I'll send you you can send me the bill later.
Royalty free, my friend. I want to help the industry go out there. One of my favorite techniques.
You, me, us, and you mentioned, defining expectations and measuring them, and then you go into a QBR. I've experienced a lot of QBRs where, the ops team or the on-site managers just really nervous about presenting, and the fact of the matter is a QBR is really the scorecard of yourself, your services. It's not about the client. It's about you. And did you meet your commitments that you promised? Where did you fall short? Where did you succeed? What are you doing about it moving forward? What would the client like to see, tying into the you, me, us, what are their goals and expectations? And let's get realigned. But really, that's a self-assessment going to the QBR. You're coming to report how we did as an organization supporting your staffing needs.
Absolutely. And don't be afraid if you got some negative marks on there. Nobody in this industry gets it perfect 100% of the time, right? That's just the nature of it. Companies, the clients you work with, they realize that. and they're more likely to build strong, meaningful relationships with the ones that can actually acknowledge their shortfalls and be open to collaborative feedback and then work to improve. If you can do that and you look at your numbers as not good or bad, but is or isn't, and say, okay, this is what it came in at. That's our benchmark. We got to improve. How do we do that? Great. And then you move forward. And if you keep doing that, you will build trust and credibility with your client base, and they will do more business with you and they will value the relationship.
Yeah, that's good. All right. I want to hit on data analytics and AI that you mentioned earlier, moving into 2025. How do you see sales teams moving forward using those analytics, using AI to really be more efficient, more effective? Because this is a big deal. It's changing our industry. It's changing every industry. And you'd be surprised, but a lot of teams, sales reps I've interacted with other organizations, many are just they're not tuned into the analytics. They're not tuned into the AI tools, and they're not leveraging them the way that people that have adopted are.
Yeah. And for me, Stephen, there are two separate buckets. Data, analytics is really taking information that your company is producing in all of your interactions and business offerings and actually using that information to make informed decisions, right? So, and then AI is its own beast, which I'll cover in a second. But with data analytics, this one, there's the traditional way that sales leaders and salespeople should be looking at it. Like, you should track all of your efforts, meaning how many prospects did you go after in a given period of time? How many, if you set up a multi-step campaign, like how many touches are in there? How many touches is it taking? Or where are you actually converting or removing someone from your prospecting cycle in that cadence? How many calls you're making, how many emails, networking events you're attending, LinkedIn outreach, all of those kinds of things. You should be tracking those to see how many meetings are you getting out of it. So you can identify how much effort and work it takes to get a meeting, right? And then out of those meetings, how many are turning into proposals? Because not all of them do. Sometimes you disqualify a business, they're not a fit. Sometimes the client disqualifies you, is not a fit. But sometimes you get to do a proposal. You submit proposal. You get some back, you get some no. Some people say you're too expensive, or this isn't going to work, or we're going to wait till the next year, whatever it might be, but you get some yeses. So what is that conversion rate, right? And then ultimately you want to know how much work, meetings, proposals go into getting a contract. And then you should be tracking how many of those contracts turn into billing clients, because inexplicably, not every contract comes with an order, and not every contract that comes with an order gets filled and turns into money in the bank, right? So you got to be actually looking at that piece of it. And from that standpoint, sales leaders should be looking to set benchmark data for their producers and see what area do I need to improve. If you see somebody and their proposal conversion rate for meetings is low, maybe they're not selling properly. Maybe they're not being assertive, or they're not actually asking to be able to submit a proposal. If you see that someone's proposal to contract rate sort of falls off, maybe there's a pricing issue going on. Maybe the market is telling you something like, hey, your clients aren't really buying at this price anymore, and you got to look into that. If you see conversion from prospecting attempts to meetings fall off, hey, maybe that person needs some remedial training, because sales training is not a one-time thing. This is an ongoing effort, which I'll get into that in a use for AI in a second. One of the cool tools I like out there right now is through Sourcewell. Sourcewell is a neat tool. I learned about them at the Aviante Connect conference, and they basically have a way to put your multi-touch campaign in there, log your calls and your emails, and automate your emails. And they've got an AI tool to help kind of craft copy based on success metrics that they have from a aggregator audience, I believe. But they basically build out a multi-touch campaign. So as a leader, you get this kind of centralized visibility into all your salespeople's campaigns going on, and you see conversion metrics. But what I really like about it is now they have the ability to do A/B testing, on the email. Yeah. So you can actually put in two different emails, and it will send one to half your list and the other to the other half. And you can see which subject lines are opening up better, which copy is converting better. And you can actually start to iterate the performance of your prospecting cycles, right? And that's really cool. And then as a sales leader, you can be like, hey, this email is converting really high. Let me create a template and share this with the rest of the team to start using it. So these small iterations, these incremental improvements will actually start to level up your entire sales process. And that's just an example of one of those tools out there that I see. We're actually, and Staffing Dashboard is actually rolling out the sales activity tracker here later next year, which will do all of the tracking and performance, telling managers where they should be looking to improve their sales team. So that's the data-driven side of it.
Yeah.
data analysis, I'll stop there in case you want to jump in. And then
I'll jump in real quick because I love what you just said. I experienced this recently earlier in the year where, we had a high conversion rate from contract sent to sign, right? It was 70%, which was good.
Nice.
Love that. But our discovery meeting to contract signed was 11% conversion rate. And so, looking at the data, immediately identified we have a real training opportunity with our discovery meetings.
Yeah.
And so taking my team through a 12-week in-person training on discovery meetings, as a group, to improve, their discovery meetings, and highly effective. And that was an informed decision based on the data. So I just wanted to share that there.
I love that. Spot on.
Yeah. But now moving into AI, I want to hear more about that.
Yeah. So I will tell you this. Is it going to be super appealing to spin up these AI bots that can make thousands and thousands of cold calls and manage some of the process? It is. It's going to be super appealing for sales leaders and organizations that want to do this. However, there is a word of caution. One, if you treat it like a numbers game, your clients will treat you like a number and you will be further commoditized. Two, if you show that that can be done, you will further increase the risk of AI displacing our industry, right? And you're taking the human element out of it, which is the most important part. If you want to know why staffing in our industry has stood the test of time against all the previous threats, it's because we've held on to the importance of the human element. And if we start actually bringing in automation and AI to replace human elements for some marginal gain, we'll honestly be doing it to ourselves. So that's my caution. But here's how I would like to use AI, right? Two simple things. Surface level, there's some great salespeople out there that they've got the silver tongue and they can talk, but when it comes to writing, they suck, right? So you can actually use the tools like Bard and ChatGPT and whatever to help you with your email copy, right? Run it through and say, hey, rewrite this. And I think Google has it now with Gemini. You can actually just say, rewrite this email or whatever. So there's ways that you can kind of clean your copy up and make you seem a little bit more polished. So that's a very surface level thing that you should be doing. Gives you a better, kind of impression. Outside of that, there's other tools that you can look into, but this is my number one advice for using AI to help get better in sales. Use it to do more role practice. Butler Street is doing some really interesting things with creating role practice backed AI bots through, I think, ChatGPT and some of the other tools out there. Joey Frampus did this live for us at a NISA event where he took the entire audience through role practice training where we got to be the salesperson and then the AI bot was the buyer, and it had a set buyer persona with preloaded challenges and objections and things like that. And you had to go through and navigate it. And what's really cool is everything is transcripted. So if you're a leader, you can start to see where your salespeople are maybe missing an opportunity to ask a key question, or maybe presenting too early, or maybe not overcoming an objection a certain way. And you can start to train them and keep running them through those simulations to get better and refine it. And the reason I like this a lot is, one, most agencies don't do enough role practice. And I found that the reason that they don't do this is because it's super uncomfortable. Not only are you tying up the time of your new salesperson or a salesperson, you're tying up whoever has to be the prospect's time, whether it's a manager or whoever else, right? So you're losing time. Plus, it's super uncomfortable, and then the manager or someone has to be there to observe it so they can give critical feedback to help improve the person. So if you actually use AI in a training and development way where you're actually letting them role practice, you can actually you can train your custom GPT to grade against a rubric that matters for your specific agency to say, hey, we want their greeting to hit these things. We want their 30-second commercial to hit this. We want their questions to do this. Like, you can train it with what's important for you and then have the GPT grade against that. So it will compute a grade to say, hey, your salesperson is hitting this level of percentage on their cold calls. What's also really cool in the same vein, now that they've actually really improved the audio uptake of this, is now you can actually do it in sales meetings and say, hey, we're going to train people to go all the way through a sales meeting. And you can use this tool to actually log more reps, do more practice, and actually hone their skills better. And what's really amazing about it, if you track it back to the data we just talked about, you can say, hey, I need you to go into this AI model and work on your discovery meetings.
Yep.
right? So that's how I think AI has the best chance of helping us maintain that human element, but actually level up that human element. And I think clients are going to appreciate that. I do think that while the new generation of candidates don't mind interacting with, bots or tools like, Glide or the chat bots or whatever it is like that, like, I do think that buyers that are considering spending millions of dollars with a staffing partner wants to know there's a human on the other end of it. And if there's not, they probably think, okay, we can just do this ourselves. So that's my piece on AI, Stephen.
Yeah, you hit it spot on. I'm with you. When it comes to just your basic communication skills, following up, writing great proposals, like AI is a great tool for you if you struggle with that, or you just want to improve it, make it a little bit more crisp and polished. But the role playing, I saw that from Butler Street. When GPTs came out with ChatGPT, that was actually the first thing I did is I created my own role playing GPT. I imported all of our parameters and we started practicing with it. But I think, organizations also are looking at the AI agents, they're quickly just getting better and better, and they can sound like a real person, and that you can just feed it with all the relevant information. There is kind of that, you almost want to lean into that, be like, wow, I could save a lot if this is effective. We're not there today. And so, in 2025, we need salespeople on the ground, building real relationships, talking to people. But I'm not going to throw it out and say it won't be here 4 or 5 years from now. And you've got dozens of these agents and very small sales team. It's, it could happen.
It will be, but just be aware that the more AI that we induce into this industry, the more commoditized that we're going to be, because you actually will strip the human relationship component out of client relationship management. So,
which we see that with some of these self-dispatching apps, these gig apps.
Yeah.
And that's a real challenge in our industry, because it's a completely different playing field, and there's pros and cons. Some customers love it. They don't have to deal with an agency at all. And many others are like, I can't talk to anybody when I have a problem.
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting the next couple of years. We're coming up on time here, Dan. And so I just want to close it out with, if there's anything you want to share with the audience here about scaling sales in 2025. And then lastly, I want you to just speak about your Staffing Sales Summit and how people can find you.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. So if you're a leader and you're looking to scale your sales, I will tell you right now, clarity and focus and alignment with core values and what you deliver as a company is going to be the most essential thing that you can focus on. There's right now, with the changes in the marketplace, the generic way that our industry has sold in the past has basically made us look all the same. And there's a massive blue ocean opportunity out there to meet the sophisticated client where they're at and showcase, this is how we do things differently. This is actually how we're using technology and automations and AI and human recruiters to really identify talent in a meaningful way with great performance metrics. Really identify the value that you provide, get with your marketing teams, improve your sales enablement, teach your salespeople the value that actually provides, and then talk to your existing customers and quantify that value or qualify that value. So they got case studies. So when they go walk into a potential prospect or they get a meeting, they can say, hey, are you struggling with turnover? Are you struggling with this problem? Oh, we've solved that. Can I show you some data about how we helped another company similar to yours solve this exact challenge, right? That right there, if you streamline that process, you will go so much further, and you'll be much further ahead than all the other agencies that are still just trying to figure out how to do generic selling and do more of it. So that's what I'd be looking at if I was a sales leader right now, is how do I create clarity and focus and strategic alignment throughout that process to scale sales right now.
Love it.
And Sales Summit, I will tell you, if you want to learn how to do just that and all of the stuff that we've talked about here, you got to get to Orlando, February 26th to the 28th, 2025. We're going to be at the Margaritaville, which is an amazing venue for a sales conference. And we've got an amazing lineup. We've got 12 of the most prestigious speakers in the industry coming in to drop knowledge. The entire thing. This is not a surface level conference. This is a workshop. This is a master class. Every single speaker has the mandate to teach the people in attendance something that they can apply and take away to see positive results. The agenda is absolutely out of this world. I'm telling you what, people are excited about this. I'm geeking out about it. Registration's capped at 100. We're actually trending ahead of our registration right now. So I think that we're going to be selling out here, if not by the end of the year, probably by mid-January. So if you want to go to this and you want to skill yourself up as a sales producer, or you want to get better as a sales leader, this is the only conference in our industry that is exclusively for sales producers and sales leaders. So, and Stephen, I'm sure you can probably drop a link to that registration if people want to go check that out. Otherwise, just Google Staffing Sales Summit and you'll find it.
Yeah, I'm adding that right now to the screen. I will be there as well. I'll be a first-time attendee. Extremely excited. I love the workshop concept because that's where the rubber meets the road.
That's it.
You feel good during a summit, but when you have a workshop and you learn things, that's what sticks. So excited about that.
Yeah, go check the agenda out, man. It is rock solid with what the takeaways are going to be for the people in attendance. So this is going to be an amazing event. I hope you can get there. I'm looking forward to meeting you there in person, man. And you should actually do one of these live streams from there. I know the Shark is going to be hosting it's 5 o'clock here Mixer on the 27th at 5 o'clock in Margaritaville. And he's going to be doing some live stream stuff. So, man, come out to that event, live stream there.
Words out of my mouth. I will be live streaming from there.
I love it, man.
Can't thank you enough for sharing such great knowledge and tactics for sales teams and sales leaders in 2025. Love to have you back on again. We have so much more content we didn't get to, so open invite. Love to have you anytime.
Let me know.
Really great knowledge today. As a reminder for everybody, next Friday we're going to have a guest speaker, Robert Reed from Butler Consult. Was it Butler?
Butler Street. Butler
Street, yeah. So he's coming on next week. He's going to provide a ton of value when it comes to selling. He's going to use some of his improv training from his past. You don't want to miss it. So
he's amazing. Friday. He's amazing. He was one of the highest rated speakers at the summit last year and was back by request this year. So Robert Reed is an amazing trainer. Honestly, his sessions alone are worth the price of admission. He's great. And anyone that tunes into this next week to see Robert Reed, you're in for a show. The guy's great.
Awesome. Well, thanks again, Dan. Thanks everybody for tuning in. Have a great weekend and we'll see you next week.
All right. See you, Stephen.